Online pseudoskeptics, this is your life. I just found this animation, author uncontactable, that goes a long way toward distilling the many underfunctionings of online self-styled skeptics. It's a dialogue between a scientist and one of the skeptic community, actually revealing the many falsehoods in their beliefs, or more accurately, seriously errant behavior policies. It's a summary of many encounters online with these aggrieved, vexatious people that entirely agrees with my extensive personal experience and the well-catalogued pseudo-skeptic online behaviors at debunkingskeptics.com. The animation starts with the skeptic's always noted, absurd, infantile belief that because the scientific method utilizes skepticism for testing and dispute in its peer review process, that anyone who engages in online bullying is automatically a scientist. And one doesn't need to know anything about the subject at hand. Just go cyberbullying away, randomly, toward anyone you meet, and you are permitted, in fact it's virtually mandatory, for the pseudo-skeptic to pose as a scientist in his first couple of YouTube entries demanding scientific references and proof, while never providing any such thing themselves, for their own exorbitant claims, like the perennial, "There is no evidence of X," which is attached to a ridicule statement. It's pure armchair, thought-free debunking. And being a pseudo-scientist, the pseudo-skeptic doesn't need to know anything about the subject discussed, as he simply projects an imaginary ideal cringing opponent that exists only in his own head onto the other person on the YouTube chat line. The perfectly molded, laboriously crafted skeptic's opponent is a custom-made perfect victim, and the pseudo-skeptic has a battery of well-practiced, hard-hitting, belligerent, killer put-downs itching to be fired at anyone who comes into the pseudo-skeptic's crosshairs. Man, woman, or child. So complete strangers on YouTube, Mr. and Mrs. Average, will find themselves bewildered by the pseudo-skeptic's idiotic assumptions, being accused of religious fundamentalist crimes, like reading holy books, being intelligent design wackos, paranormal New Age charlatans, and conmen. This is a very common occurrence, because pseudo-skeptics never check anyone's personal account videos to get a glimmer of who they are typing to. So impulsive they are. They just come in swinging. Who cares who it is? The trick is to land the first punch. Survival of the fittest, like in school bullying. Average adults online will be further nonplussed when the pseudo-skeptic projects still more of his ideal idiot victim attributes from inside his own head onto his randomly chosen victims. You must believe in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus if you believe that. And you are just a flat earther, don't you know anything? This is simply juvenile playground taunting, reflecting the mindscape of the pseudo-skeptic's infantile intellect. That's what he thinks about frequently. That's the prepubescent stage he is at, still celebrating, as a physical adult, that he found out Santa Claus doesn't exist, and he is just so smart and cocky. Only infantile pseudo-skeptics repeatedly bring up Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. It's widely observed amongst militant atheists. This author has managed to avoid falling victim to the Easter Bunny attack by never getting into the theist versus atheist debate, but I am still bracing myself. Laughing out loud. The flat earther accusation seems to be an invention of pseudo-skeptics, because at no time in history did anyone actually believe in the flat earth. Most likely it's an adult metaphor taken literally by infantile pseudo-skeptics. And it's used by pseudo-skeptics as a put-down of educated, thoughtful people who express doubts about science being perfect that is anathema to the peace kept. In the animation, another fairy tale belief of pseudo-skeptics is patiently rebutted. That science as they see it is a monolithic block of pure truth that never changes, and it's always right, and it's on their side, always. The animation stresses that science is always partly unknown, forever growing, and subject to continuous updates. So clearly nobody can claim the scientific high ground, or have the final word, as science is open-ended, but that doesn't stop peacecaps forever falsely claiming the scientific high ground, with their fairy tale beliefs in the infantile monolithic block of pure truth fantasy that they hold so dear, like a teddy bear. So here is the neato animation.
Hi, I'm a skeptic.
Hi, I'm a scientist.
Me too. I'm a skeptic.
Well, skepticism is only a part of science, not the whole thing.
Science is skeptical. It must be skeptical.
Are you familiar with the scientific method?
Of course. I'm a skeptic.
Do you understand that science is a process? As scientists, we observe new phenomena. We come up with hypotheses to explain them, and then we put those hypotheses to various tests to see if our explanations really fit, or whether we're just fooling ourselves. That's where skepticism should come in. Then if our hypothesis passes those tests, we call it a theory. That's the end point of our process. A theory is a best fit to the observed phenomena. It's not absolute truth. Science is open-ended, and its conclusions are always provisional and subject to change when new observations or better explanations come along.
No. As a skeptic, I begin with an existing explanation and go directly to the endpoint, the same existing explanation. It's more definitive. It's also much faster and cheaper, and it doesn't force me to think or to change my mind. Instead of your clumsy process, we skeptics use a simpler and more streamlined approach. It's called summary dismissal and ridicule. It easily disposes of bunk and BS.
Now wait a minute. Are you saying that ridicule and dismissal are part of science?
Of course. They help us to be dispassionate and objective skeptics. Name-calling helps, too.
You call yourself a skeptic, but what we really are is a debunker.
A skeptic by any other name is still a skeptic. We skeptics are against ridiculous things. We know what's ridiculous and what's not.
How do you know what's ridiculous without actually studying it?
We skeptics know it when we see it. For example, the whole idea of continental drift is ridiculous.
I think you're a little behind the times. Science verified continental drift years ago.
That's not possible. The Earth is flat. So what would make continents move?
I'm afraid you've got some catching up to do. In any case, the absence of a plausible mechanism does not forbid the existence of a phenomenon. If it did, we would have had no diseases prior to the discovery of microbes, and the sun would have given no light before we became aware of nuclear fusion.
We skeptics are very careful in our methodology. We scan the supermarket tabloids microscopically for any articles about weird stuff. When a tabloid publishes something, we know for sure it's ridiculous.
I might not know whether weird things, like powered flight and continental drift, are real or not, but as a scientist I would not dismiss either of them unless I'd actually done my homework, read the literature, asked questions, and made up my own mind.
We skeptics believe that if you even inquire into weird stuff, you must believe it's absolutely true from the get-go. You're gullible. But speaking of powered flight, did you know that it took 3 years for the Scientific American to acknowledge the Wright brothers' first flight? That's an example of prudent scientific journalism.
Speaking of history, did you know that science and democracy both appeared at about the same time? Did you know that they both sprang from the same impulses of independent thought, the freedom to do one's own experiments, and the rejection of imposed beliefs and institutional authority?
You non-skeptics have no respect for institutional authority.
Many scientists today do actually find themselves having to obey institutional authority in order to keep their job, funding and reputation, and avoid ridicule and dismissal. But, in their heart of hearts, they wish they could get their freedom back and once again apply their talents to expanding human knowledge and meeting real human needs.
I think you non-skeptics are simply superstitious.
Superstitions are like rumors that just go around mindlessly from one person to another. It's like a contagion. Many self-described skeptics base their beliefs on such rumors without engaging any of their own critical thinking.
I'll bet you believe in crop circles, the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus.
We scientists don't confuse reality with fairy tales. Crop circles actually exist, but I have no opinion about them because I haven't researched them. However, I can tell you that aliens exist because I've seen them with my own eyes.
You're crazy. I'm out of here.
Bye.
Recapping now, in the animation, another fairy tale belief of pseudoskeptics is patiently rebutted. that science as they see it is a monolithic block of pure truth that never changes, and it's always right, and it's on their side, always. The animation stresses that science is always partly unknown, forever growing, and subject to continuous updates. So clearly nobody can claim the scientific high ground, or have a final word, as science is open-ended, but that doesn't stop PSCAPs forever falsely claiming the scientific high ground, with their fairy tale beliefs in the infantile monolithic block of pure truth fantasy that they hold so dear, like a teddy bear. And that is the major clue. Teddy bears. Astute observers at debunkingskeptics.com often say PSCAPs hang on to their woeful understanding of science with religious zeal. Better stated, science is their infantile, adult, teddy bear, to which they cling, believing that science, as they see it, is a monolithic block of pure truth that never changes, and it's always right, and it's on their side, always, and always there for them, when the PSCAP is afraid, which is often due to frequent bafflement in the scary adult world, bless them. Now what can be done to stop these unhappy adult crybabies from biting our ankles all over the net? Possibly something counterintuitive, coming from their own favorite, supplementary father figure and teddy bear, James Randi. Incredibly, in the 1980 TV documentary James Randi actually proved water dowsing works. Accidentally, of course, and he lied to cover up the result. But Arthur C. Clarke, the science luminary and an august experiment scrutineer, pronounced Randi a fraud and liar, and said that Randi's results showed a positive signal in the numbers. Clarke then presented a Utah professor, who took 25 randomly chosen students, and discovered 23 could get a signal twitch in the coat hanger dowsing rods as they walked over a concealed coat hanger in a 60-foot course, verified by electronic instruments. Meaning any yabo can learn dowsing in a few minutes. That's how this yabo learned it. The video is a good dowsing lesson for beginners. It's an adjacent video. But we don't get our hopes up too high, as PSCAPs are generally too mentally disabled, too feeble, to cut 2 coat hangers in 2 letter L shapes and search for a concealed third hanger. Even after watching a video demo, certainly dowsing is the quickest way into a paranormal experience, which is actually purely natural, and no big deal at all, after a few days of messing about. Nothing to be scared of. Has anyone ever been killed by the paranormal? Dowsing certainly does provide visible physical evidence of a seemingly paranormal event, available to anyone with the ability to cut 2 coat hangers. But that's beyond PSCAPs, regrettably. After that, a simple thing is to visit Neil Slade's website and learn to click one's amygdala forward and backward. It's a brain internal organ. The clicking results in feelings of physical pleasure exceeding that of recreational drugs, it's reported by some. You can learn it for free at his site. And it's based on hard physical brain anatomy evidence in animals and people. Ultra-conservative medical research. One can click one's amygdala several times daily and experience considerable mood elevation, biochemical bliss, no matter what one's circumstance. This is suggested as PSCAPs are a decidedly miserable lot of people, clearly suffering depression, anxiety, fear, and plain bloody-mindedness, for no real reason. Amygdala clicking can go a long way to alleviate this grief. Clicking can make one laugh out loud. Lightheartedness is never ever displayed by PSCAPs online. And then from Neil Slade, for free, you can also learn to bust small clouds in the sky. Something wonderfully paranormal that I learned and practiced in a couple of weeks. Thousands have done this. Naturally reveals one's extended mind that goes way beyond our physical body. As in Rupert Sheldrake. Wonderfully paranormal, but really so normal. Certainly a wonderful achievement for any individual, journeying out of ardent fear-filled materialism. And once you can bust clouds, you can see if you can make people turn around when you stare at them. As in Sheldrake. I learned to make them scratch and rub their faces in a particular spot while reading a newspaper in a food mall. It doesn't work on people eating. That's too engrossing a process. And if you want more evidence of the extended mind in your own head, the only place to have it, a psychic experience, one can learn basic remote viewing from me in 5 emails.